Hello and welcome to the Penalty Box.
If you are firm and you are sure that you can move and you can score.
I'm Peter Clottey, and in the Penalty Box today we'll have a review of the matches in Group G. We had Portugal facing the US men's national team and the Ghanaian Black Stars taking on the German Machine. As usual, my experts are here, and today they'll look at the details of the matches. So experts, what were your views about the US-Portugal? Andre, let me come to you.
It was a most interesting game. I must confess, I've been watching soccer for 47 years, and I have never seen a buzzer beater. I've seen late goals, but a buzzer beater, that's for other sports. So it was very interesting. I can tell you that it changed radically the animus of both teams. It changed radically the animus of both nations. Some of my colleagues in Portugal and some of my family in Portugal were absolutely elated, even in the middle of a little bit of desperation, over the last second goal, while a couple of my colleagues and friends in the United States were just totally devastated, while at the same time holding high hopes. So a very interesting set of circumstances for this match.
You know, Klinsmann looked to be shocked.
I would be too. A lot of people were shocked. I mean, they really deserve the 3 points out of that game, obviously. But the two goals that were scored in the match by Portugal, both of which were off of huge mistakes. The bad defensive miscue very early in the game put them down early. They didn't let that get to them. They played well the rest of the game. But Michael Bradley really giving them that ball at the center of the pitch there at the end, just with about 40 seconds to go. All he would have had to do is complete a pass, clear it out. They probably wouldn't have had enough time to be able to get down and have another opportunity, but there it was. And Ronaldo had a really poor game, but you give him one chance to make something happen, and he can make the best of it. That's what happened. They got their point. It wasn't a bad result, but it complicates things a bit.
No, the most amazing thing is that group of death turned out to be group of life, because all four teams are still alive after 2 rounds, and that's amazing. I think that no one could have predicted outcome like this. So it's just, we are witnessing really, I would say, spectacular World Cup with many surprises, Spain being out, England being out, just wonderful.
Some people were speculating that it appeared the Portuguese were a little tired. I mean, they were skillful, they were a little bit more skillful than the Americans. You could tell Klinsmann really drilled the American team well, but the Portuguese were tired for some odd reason. I don't understand why.
It is a tough environment. The environment where they were playing is very, very tough. And interestingly enough, that type of circumstance from a weather standpoint happens more often in the United States than in Portugal because of their climate. Now, one thing that I find fascinating about this particular group is the fact that we could actually have, I think for the first time in World Cup history, a group where all of the teams end up with 4 points.
4 points.
Right? And everything is decided on goal differential. It would be absolutely astonishing to think that a team like this, and I guess in a lot of ways it would give it both the group of life and the group of death denominations, right? This is the group of, in between.
Absolutely, absolutely. You could clearly tell that, although the FIFA ranking you had, Germany being tops, followed by Portugal, the US and Ghana. I mean, it could be anybody's game at any time.
It's really tough. The teams in that group, even Portugal has surprisingly looked the weakest. A lot of people felt like they were pretty beatable, but they've looked in rough shape in both games. They're probably lucky to even have a point. But regardless of that, they're still a pretty quality team. They have a lot of great players. There aren't any teams in that group, as everybody thought coming in, that are extraordinarily weak. So they all can make their own case and to an extent control their own destiny in the games coming up to get the results that they need to move on. So it's really great that there is at least a group that we feel like there's not going to be a single meaningless game the entire time in that group.
What surprised a lot of people was the performance of Portugal against Sweden.
Yes.
The way they played to qualify to the World Cup and then to get to the World Cup or the so-called promised land and then get tired, it's baffling.
I think Ronaldo at that period was at his best this season. So right now, as we know that there is some knee injury is involved in his performances. So we can see that he's struggling. That's not the Ronaldo that we kind of know that shines on the field. So we can see the result. It's not, but still, his genius helped yesterday Portugal to score that second goal.
Now, what about the Germany-Ghana match? I mean, a lot of people I spoke with said Ghana had no chance. And then, Ghana put up a spirited performance against
No, I think Ghana is technically very good team. They're very well organized. I was impressed with the way how they play against Germany. They were not impressed by Germans. I mean, some people kind of get scared a little bit. Portugal, because of probably the history of playing with Germans. Ghana played very bravely, courageously, and that's the outcome, 2-2.
Soccer is enough of a mystery that you could have the results that you've had. I mean, Costa Rica, nobody would ever bet on Costa Rica going through with 2 wins, right? After 2 rounds, so nobody could have bet on that. In the field of the Group G, yesterday the Americans were literally 8-10 seconds away from going through with 2 victories, in 2 games, right? While Germany and Portugal would be either on the waiting list or eliminated altogether. So this is a sport now where the equality of the talent and the athleticism is really started to make itself felt. Right, especially in the areas that already had some degree of a soccer tradition, and now because of new training regimens and everything else, really are coming up to par. Look at the fantastic, Central America and South America, results that we've seen. I think that is a long-term coming of a tradition that is there now being made possible by the new realities of a global economy and a global environment where everybody has the same kind of training opportunities.
Costa Rica was supposed to be the weakest team in that group. And they're the first team to advance.
Absolutely.
I heard an interview, the German coach gave, and he said he was surprised by how the Ghanaian team pushed them to the wall. He gave, so-called props to the Ghanaian team, and he was surprised at how powerful they played against them. They could have easily lost the match, he said.
It was a different type of soccer. I mean, everyone talks about the German machine. The Ghanaians outran them, outflanked them. They looked like they were younger. They looked like they were hungrier than the Germans. They played with a lot of passion. That's a really underrated aspect of soccer. When a team comes into the game, they just look like they wanted more. And the Ghanaians have looked like they've really wanted to advance in both of the games that they played. They played really well.
So we are up to looking at Germany facing the United States. Who do you bet on?
No predictions. After these 2 rounds, it's really, what do you say?
So imagine a scenario where next weekend we will be here discussing the fact that the USA and Ghana went through in the group of death. Now that would be quite a surprise, but it is a new reality. And one thing that is fabulous about this World Cup is the number of goals that are being scored. It is truly amazing, and it makes the game that much more interesting. This just might be the World Cup that makes that turnaround in the American public, where all of a sudden it becomes the elite sport that it is everywhere else in the world, and it gains the attention that is always richly deserved.
Especially if they go through.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, that will definitely have an impact on that equation.
I actually think that scenario is going to happen. I think the Ghanaians and I think the U.S. are going to move through in the group.
Wow.
You cannot. But you cannot take any game for granted at this ongoing World Cup. Thanks, folks. This is about all time we'll permit us for today. Thanks for joining us in the penalty box. I'm Peter Clotty. Bye for now.
Dribble,